Good day. It is said that first impressions are everything, but like with so many things, there are exceptions to the rule. Fallout New Vegas was a game whose first impression was not good. When I first picked up this holy relic in the primordial days of 2013, I was unimpressed by its brown color palette and seemingly dull and unfocused story. It would take a year or so for me to really give the game its due, and finally, at last, get hooked on it. First impressions aren't everything, and sometimes it takes a little bit for a game's true greatness to show. Before we get to the game, let's take a step, or a lot of steps back to the past, and see just where Fallout New Vegas came from. The very word Fallout has a double meaning. It references nuclear fallout and the consequences of a major event. The concept of a post-apocalyptic story is nothing new, with such stories going back into antiquity. H.G. Wells penned a very early post-apocalyptic story set after a major non-nuclear war called The Shape of Things to Come. This story would give inspiration for many such stories to come. The splitting of the atom was a monumentous event in human history and showed that a bunch of dirt grubbers could harness the very power of the universe itself. The fallout of such a discovery was that it would be used to make extremely powerful weapons. The right or wrong of it remains to be seen. The Cold War would begin shortly after the Second World War came to a close, with the US on one side and the evil, USSR on the other side. Each nation would point megatons of destructive power at one another, and thus would inspire countless writers to postulate what would come of a Third World War. Deathlands was a novel series that began in 1985 with the novel Pilgrimage to Hell. This novel series lasted for almost 3 decades and was penned by numerous writers that used the publishing name of Jack Adrian. This novel series possibly inspired some of the Fallout universe, as it has a very similar premise. An alternate world had a final war where it was drowned in nuclear and chemical fire. Humanity rebuilt and is struggling to survive in the post-atomic horror. In this series, America is called the Deathlands instead of the Wasteland. The time period is the 22nd century instead of the 23rd century. There are underground vaults called readouts. Therein, science experiments were carried out and supplies were hoarded. Mutants exist and were created via top-secret chemicals, and epic characters have to travel the Deathlands righting wrongs and stopping villains. And yes, even giant ants exist. Fallout, as we know, is a 50s-inspired universe, and Deathlands is an 80s-inspired universe with all the 80s fun one can imagine. If you're a fan of the Fallout games, check these books out, as you will be right at home. Sadly though, in the Deathlands universe, the Mojave is a giant inland sea. Fallout's direct antecedent, and I mean direct, as in created by much of the same staff, was 1988 Wasteland. This was a top-down RPG set in the post-apocalyptic wasteland beset by mutants and raiders, and had you, the player, being a member of the Desert Rangers, and you had to bring peace to the wasteland. It was a very impressive RPG for its day, and if you are a fan of rock-hard RPGs, it can be acquired from GOG. Much of what we would come to see in Fallout would get its start here, but due to rights issues, the devs had to create a new universe, with both blackjack and hookers. In the old world, an evil China and an alternate evil America fought for resources in the future year of 2077. Due to an undisclosed reason, both nations launched their nukes, and thus the world fell into barbarism. And war never changes. A line mocked these days, but the idea behind this line is sound, and is justified in the opening blurb. China and evil alternate America fought for resources and power, and the factions in the post-nuclear wasteland are fighting for much the same thing. The tech changes, but the brutality and the inhumanity of war never changes. Gaming tech had changed, and the game was quite impressive in its day as well, although like with Wasteland, it only appealed to those who liked really hardcore RPGs. This game used the GURPS system, aka Generic Role-Playing System. All of what will be seen in Fallout New Vegas got its start right here. The factions, the terminology, and the general world all got its start in Fallout 1. This is still a top-down turn-based RPG like Wasteland, and for that reason I never really got into it. Your mission here is to find find a water chip for Vault 13. The world is bleak and uncaring and is much closer to Deathlands than what later Fallout games would be. Fallout 2 would be released in 1998 and would improve upon many things that were seen in Fallout 1, and would take the tone in a more lighthearted direction. There would be numerous humorous moments and Easter eggs to be found. We still have a top-down turn-based RPG, but it's apparently less hard. Sure it is. This would be Fallout New Vegas's direct inspiration, with many of the factions in New Vegas returning from this game. In this game, you are a tribal and a grandchild of the protagonist from the previous game. You are charged by your village to find a GEC, or Garden of Eden creation kit. Along the way, you find more colorful characters and even face the remnants of the evil US government called the Enclave. This is yet another game for only hardcore RPG gamers. Thankfully, in 2008, a much less hardcore RPG would be released called Fallout 3. This would be my first ever Fallout game. Prior to randomly coming across this in a local Target, the same Target where I picked up a bunch of legendary games, such as AVP2, I had never even heard of the Fallout franchise. I didn't read gaming mags in the 1990s, nor did I frequent gaming forums either, so it completely passed me by. Not that I would have liked it back then, even if I had heard of the franchise, as Fallout 1 and 2 would have been far too difficult for me to really enjoy. Fallout 3 was meant to be a soft reboot for the series after it was bought by Bethesda, and a number of lore changes took place, and the setting was moved from the western US to the eastern US. Now the game took place from a first-person perspective, and combat was real-time. In Fallout 3, you play as the Lone Wanderer, and you have to find your father, aka Qui-Gon Jinn, aka Liam Neeson, after he goes missing. This, like previous games, was an open-world RPG with numerous places to explore and people to talk to. It was a much more streamlined game as well, featuring only 2 factions to play as, and the game really expects you to be the good guy. For a first-time Fallout player, it was a great introduction to the series, as it's still hard enough to be satisfying, but not so hard that you will need a wiki open to figure out how to open a bloody door. Everything is easy enough to figure out, and the factions are understandable as well. As a gateway game, it does its job well and ensures that the player is immersed in the world and not lost in it. This game became one of my favorite RPGs of all time. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to Fallout New Vegas. It brings with it old school complexity with new school sensibilities, and thus creates one of the best RPGs ever made. Fallout New Vegas was developed by Obsidian Entertainment and was published by Bethesda in the far-off days of 2010. That's right, as of this recording, this game came out 11 years ago. It'll happen to you. Fallout New Vegas is an open-world first-person real-time RPG with an optional turn-based mode called VATS. Much of Fallout New Vegas has been carried over from Fallout 3, but there has been some advancements, and when you see the sheer breadth of content, you will see that this is no mere expansion pack. The first-person shooting combat has been overhauled to be better than Fallout 3's. In that game, you couldn't aim down sights, whereas here you can. The first-person combat is not that great, as you can still empty an entire magazine into a raider's head and it won't die. Unless you get the instant headshot mod. You have the option of having it on for only enemies or both you and the foes. Since I have blood and not balls guana, I'ma stick with just the enemies. Look at those heads fly. VATS is actually carried over from the earlier Fallouts wherein you only had turn-based combat. Here, you have a number of action points, and by using VATS, you can stop time and target certain enemy body parts. This combat is very cinematic and fairly fun to use, and gives contrast to the frantic real-time combat. There are some mods that give you a slow-mo function tied to your action points. The game initially only provides you different flavors of human to play as, but you can get race mods that open up the options a little bit. For this retrospective, I will be playing as a Robro, and this Robro race has been fully implemented into the game, with similar robot stuff to the Humi stuff. Health in this game is non-regenerative, meaning you will need healing items. You have stim packs and super stim packs when you really get rocket with a lawn chair, or have a chat with the friendly neighborhood Deathclaw. Unlike in Fallout 3, you will need a doctor's bag to sew all your limbs back on whenever you get blasted. For the robot character, it's Wonder Glue and duct tape. Fallout New Vegas is as difficult as you want to make it. You can play normal mode, wherein you have to repair your weapons and armor, but you yourself are quasi-immortal. You will not need sleep or food. Or you can play hardcore mode. In 2010, this was seen as a bit groundbreaking and would go on to inspire many other games to come. In hardcore mode, the immersion really ramps up. You gotta eat, drink water, sleep, and your ammo has weight. You must balance all of these elements to survive an even tougher Mojave Wasteland. Believe it or not, I did a playthrough, or most of a playthrough, with this enabled, and almost beat the game. This is by far one of the best needs systems I have yet to encounter. Other games have attempted to implement the needs system seen here, and sadly, for me at least, they make the needs systems too annoying and too hard. And sometimes some of the needs mods will weirdly break, like a Skyrim mod that makes the player randomly get drunk if they attack Thalmor for some reason. Here in New Vegas, it's just tough enough to be immersive, but not hard enough to get annoying. You can pretty much always find enough water and food, and the game doesn't bug you about it every 5 minutes. And it will add something to the player's overall satisfaction when one has to balance everything to stay alive. It's fun, but not punishing, and should be tried at least once. Even the Robro mod has needs, although here it's fission batteries. Even when played in normal mode, the game is still going to be tough. The enemies have tactics and health and are armed to the teeth. Good thing you have access to really cool and effective armor, and the armor actually has the ability to reduce damage. Unfortunately, the enemy's armor can do this as well. Power armor is a beast when it comes to shrugging off small arms fire. Power armor with mods can be as complex as you want it to be, with mods that have it work like it does in Fallout 4 and mods that make it carry its own weight. The game is filled to the brim with excellent weapons even before you get to the modded weapons. The game features way more realistic calibers. No more does the hunting rifle come in 32 ACP. It is now the right and proper 308. The AR-15 is back with a vengeance, although side charging and with wood furniture. This will be a good starting rifle just like in real life. And people in real life have attempted to replicate this rifle to varying results. And anytime an AR-15 is shown with wood stocks, people always love to quote the line,
"Patrolling the Mojave almost makes you wish for a nuclear winter."
In this video, I will be blasting with 3 of my favorite guns: the Browning High Power, the H&K G3, and last but certainly not least, the K98K. Try to guess which ones are modded in. In addition to all the guns, you have your obligatory melee weapons, phase plasma pulse rifles in the 40-watt range, and the big boomers such as grenades and lawn chairs. Fallout New Vegas introduces new elements to the weapons. You have weapon repair kits, so you can repair your weapons on the fly, different and unrealistic ammo types. For example, you can use 223 and 556. That's not unrealistic. You can do that. I do that. But in the game, it damages the rifle for some reason, just like what happens in the brain of a FUD when you use steel case ammo. I suppose this was implemented to make 223 not a game breaker and make the player consider the cost-benefit ratio between using it and proper 556. You also have weapons mods that increase rate of fire or durability. There are mods that give you access to a backpack to carry more crap, and like with most aspects of New Vegas, the sky is the limit, and sometimes not even that. The game features a number of different currencies, but for all the shops, it's going to be that old standby bottle caps, which work exactly like septums in the Elder Scrolls series. One cap is the base unit of currency. You can pick up other currencies, but like with pre-war money, it can just be turned into caps at stores. You can take radiation damage, which is expected for a game called Fallout, but surprisingly there are very few radioactive hotspots. You deal with radiation damage by using Radaway, which can be found in decent quantities. If you play as the Robro, you still take rad damage, so as to avoid making it unbalanced, but you take far less than the normal meatbag, and also cure it with Radaway somehow. Like Fallout 3, your inventory is accessed via your Pip-Boy 3000, or as we see here, the modded-in Pip-Boy 2500. Whatever you got, it's an ARM-mounted computer that is a really immersive way to deal with your inventory, and it's pretty much my single favorite inventory screen in any RPG, and I kinda want one in real life. You can access your items, check your stats, quests, and use the radio. The game also gives you an unmodded option of changing the Pip-Boy and the HUD's color, and since I love Fallout 3, I went with green over the default amber. The Pip-Boy also is the game's flashlight and works well enough, but as you would expect, there are mods for better flashlights. Like Fallout 3 and the Elder Scrolls games before it, you can switch to the less useful third-person camera view. Primarily, this will be used to admire your epic armor, but it can be used to play the games, and mods dramatically improve its usefulness. Like the previous Fallout games, you have a point-buy system for selecting all of your skills and attributes. You also have a tag skill that allows you to put a lot of points in the skills that you actually care about. You then have the traits system. This gives you a benefit, but also a drawback. As a normal humie, I feel that these traits don't give you enough of a good benefit for the drawback, but as the modded-in Robro, there is one trait that I actually like: beta software. This gives you another tag skill, but the drawback is you can collapse at the start of combat. To me, totally worth it. You can also get the Wild Wasteland trait. It is supposed to be a callback to the weird Easter eggs in Fallout 2, but I never saw that it did anything in any of my playthroughs. I would imagine that there are mods that fix this. Like with Fallout 3 and the previous Fallouts, you get experience points from killing foes, completing quests, and succeeding in speech checks. This game also uses perks like Fallout 3 and pretty much all RPGs these days. And in unmodded Fallout New Vegas, you get a perk every other level, but if you add a mod, you can get it every level for maximal fun. Now, these perks will add something to your character, and these additions range from the useful commando to the mimetic sneering imperialist. The game has a decent number of levels, so reaching that level cap will take you some time. Talking in this game is the then standard silent text protagonist. You have a crap ton of dialogue options, and the most important ones are tied not to charisma or speech, but to your other skills and your attributes. Although, with that in mind, at the end of the game, you have a busted speech check that requires a 100 in speech, and you're screwed if your speech skill ain't there. But for most of the game, you will need to focus on your other skills in order to pass speech checks, because your character has to have some idea of what he's talking about to know what he's talking about, and if your skill is too low, your dude will end up sounding like an idiot. This makes talking much more difficult than just dumping everything into speech and hoping for the best. In New Vegas, you potentially will be doing a lot of talking depending on your playstyle. I like to walk softly and carry a K98K. My dude talked a lot in this game, and you will find that there are alternatives to fighting, and many enemies can be talked down. Well, not the bastard sons of Kaisar's Pizza. Shoot him in the head for $5 a bullet. Skills and attributes also play a role in other areas of gameplay. Certain quests can be completed much easier so long as you have the proper skills and attributes. Need to repair something for a quest? If you have a high enough skill or attribute, you can do it on the spot. Lack that skill, and then you gotta go get some gubbin. This makes the various skill books and skill magazines quite important in the game, since many quests will have skill checks. Skill books raise an attribute permanently, and skill magazines will temporarily raise a skill level. Both will be needed at different points of the game to progress and get a golden ending. Lockpicking returns from Fallout 3, and I quite like this lockpicking minigame, and apparently every single RPG dev liked it too, as it is now industry standard. You use a bobby pin and search for that sweet spot. With a controller, it's a bit easier as you have force feedback, unlike with mouse and keyboard. In this game, you have to be proper level to even attempt lockpicking, or you can go into the console and just type unlock, but just don't tell anyone. Hacking returns from Fallout 3, and it's just as annoying. You have to guess a password or type unlock. I like that way better. Fallout New Vegas features a bunch of companions, each with their own quests, but unlike with your BioWare-style RPGs, they are not mandatory for the story. This was also the case for Fallout 3 as well. Also, unlike in BioWare-style RPGs, you can only have one companion at a time, but mods of course will fix this. You can command them to carry your stuff, you can set their tactics, and most importantly, you can BS with them. These companions are well written and voice acted, and you can ignore them all if you want, because Fallout New Vegas is the truest form of open world. It is your game, and your dude is your dude. You can pretty much do things as you will and when you want to do them. The game never forces you down that plot railroad. Returning from Fallout 3 is the karma meter. That doesn't make much of a difference in the game. Instead, it has been supplanted by the faction meter. This game features several factions you can help or hinder. If a faction likes you, they will send troops to help you out now and again. If you shoot them in the face, they will send assassins after you. The factions in this game are the authoritarian and corrupt New California Republic, a polity that is trying to rebuild the old world and does provide a modicum of civilization for the Mojave Wasteland at the cost of high taxes and dictatorial laws. You then have the corrupt and dictatorial Mr. House, the unquestioned leader of the city of New Vegas. He works with the NCR, but wants more power. Literally. And finally, Ave, through to Caesar, the evil faction of the game. Caesar's Legion are a bunch of Roman cosplayers led by the enigmatic Caesar. They want to rule the wasteland with unquestioned power. Which faction do you want to join? Which do you want to oppose? It's all up to you. The game might have been rigged from the start, but that doesn't mean you have to play by house rules. Fallout New Vegas looked a lot like a game of its time. Thankfully, it had passed the graphics plateau. Yeah, the humans looked like action figures and the textures were weak, but the gameplay and story more than made up for the weak graphics. The biggest issue with the game are the small cities and towns, as this was post-console domination, and thus the game had to work on PC and the fairly weak consoles of the day. God, I feel old. 360 and PS3 were really pushed to their limits, hence why New Vegas itself is rather small. But despite this, the world is large enough to feel expansive, and the devs did the best they could with the console limitations in mind. Thankfully, the graphics can be improved on the PC by using high-res texture packs, replacers, EMBs, and other such improvements. For this video, I went with a fairly limited build to optimize stability, so while the game looks pretty good, it can look even better with more mods. The game does look okay in 2K, but there is a lot of texture pop-in when you push the game to its limits like this. Likely, there's also a mod for that too. Fallout New Vegas goes for a completely different art style than Fallout 3 did. Fallout 3 was a dull green game that was kind of depressing in places. What we have here, while brown due to the nature of the Mojave, is at least filled to the brim with more life. This gives the game a more approachable and unique look, and stands out from the pack of boring look-alike post-apocalyptic games. It is an art style that shows that life has moved on after the bombs and that hope can spring eternal. And you better have hope and faith in the machine god, cause the game on literally everything was Bethesda stable. Crashes, freezes, the whole bloody thing was a mess. And apparently it never worked quite right on the PlayStation 3, even to this day. We often mock games such as these for being unstable, like, how could they ship something so broken, we laugh, and also point accusingly. Fact is, Fallout New Vegas is a huge bloody game with a considerable amount of complexity. There are a shit ton of factions the game has to keep track of, and characters and character interactions as well. The fact that the game is as stable as it is shows just how dedicated the devs were to getting a bloody game that worked. The fact that the game even ran at all was nothing short of a Herculean task, and eventually the game got stable enough to where you could finish it. And mods make it more stable still, unless you put too many in there. In fact, I was never able to finish the game up until this review due to always having one mod too many, and thus the game always became unplayable before the end. But now, with proper load orders and patches, the game is more than playable for me and was well worth finishing. Controls for the game are great, either with keyboard and mouse or controller. I played this entire playthrough with a controller, and the only two issues I had were the lack of a dedicated quick save button and the ability to use the slow-mo mod. Like with other Bethesda published games, you cannot swap between controller and keyboard and mouse on the fly, which is annoying but not surprising. Fallout New Vegas has its own unique sound that is very much in keeping with its art style. I loved Marty Robbins before 90% of y'all even heard of him. As a teen, I had a burnt CD with all of the Marty Robbins classics, including Big Iron. I was rocking out to the Ranger meeting Texas Red and kicking his ass before some of you were even bloody well born. Fallout 3 introduced radio stations that you could listen to on your Pip-Boy. Sadly, the music was fairly uninspired, so I completely ignored that aspect of the game. The fan favorite 3-Dog was rather annoying to me, and I just ignored him too. New Vegas introduces some good old-fashioned country music, and Big Iron finally got the recognition it deserved. We got a new DJ named Mr. New Vegas, and he has better VA work and is much more enjoyable to listen to. VA work as a whole was pretty good in Fallout 3, certainly better than Oblivion or Skyrim, and New Vegas continues this trend. The VA work is not quite BioWare quality, with some of the performances being really flat or annoying. And yes, you will eventually start to notice that there are only a few voices to go around, but it's usually not that jarring and shouldn't ruin the immersion too much. This game introduces a few celebrity voice actors such as Danny Trejo and the dude who played Colonel Ty in Battlestar Galactica Reimagined. The firearms sound pretty good. The monsters sound suitably scary, and all told, we have a game that, while not BioWare quality in terms of audio, comes very close. Bethesda creates frameworks. The fans create the games. Here though, Obsidian created a masterpiece and the fans dipped it in gold so that it would shine evermore. Mods unlock an entire world of possibilities. Fallout New Vegas is a game that gives you the entire world to explore and play as you will, and the mods just let you go nuts with that. You want a cool bunker to live in? Mod for that. Want a G3? Mod for that. Want nudity? Oh, yes. You don't like something in New Vegas? Fix it. Want to keep playing the game after you finish the main quest? Mod. Want more immersion? Mod. There are tutorials aplenty to get them working, and with a little work, you can create a world realer than real, with wheels within wheels. What's really telling about New Vegas is that without mods, the game is still good. Thanks to mods and Obsidian's hard work, we will not see the last of New Vegas for many, many years to come. It is a game that new school fans like me and grognards can enjoy with equal measure. Alright lads and lasses, go get a bathroom break and get ready, cause we're about to jump into the world of the Mojave Wasteland. Fallout New Vegas is almost unique in that it is massively open world, but the story actually matches the open-ended nature of that world. Once you get tired of shooting bandits in face and start talking, you will find yourself drawn into a world of intrigue with competing factions, each more gray than the last. The story for Fallout New Vegas got its start in the cancelled game Fallout Van Buren. Much of what was to be in that game can be seen here. Be sure to check out the Fallout Wiki for all the juicy details, because we ain't going into it here, because you're going to be here for a while as it is. The main idea of Fallout New Vegas is that we are truly in a post-nuclear role-playing game. The hardscrabble, hand-to-mouth existence seen in previous games is over and done with. We have farms, towns have started to come back, and now the world has become even more dangerous. No more do you have to worry about a few bandits coming to kill you. Instead, you have a bunch of governments coming to kill you. The story is set sometime after Fallout 3 and takes place in the Mojave Wasteland, aka the environs in and around Las Vegas, Nevada, with a little chunk of California. Boo. You are a courier commissioned to transport something called a platinum chip. You get waylaid by the foul rat bastard named Benny. He and his henchmen steal the chip and he blasts you in the head with a high power. Yeah, could have been worse. You could have been shot with a Glock. He tells you that the game has been rigged from the start. You gon' eat those words, son, in about 10 hours at least. You get dug up and sent to Doc Mitchell. This is where you will choose your stats and ransack his house for health, ammo, and modded weapons. He even kindly gives you his Pip-Boy. He has a little backstory himself. He grew up in a vault, and it's implied that his wife died at some point, and thus he has become a simple country doctor in order to move on with his life. After donning a vault suit that was also kindly provided by the good doctor, it's time to head out the door and start your grand adventure. The biggest problem with this game is the sheer size and open-endedness of it. It's an immersive game. But when you get into the game, you have this big, huge, open world, and you have absolutely no idea what you're supposed to do in it. You then get acronyms and names thrown at you like it's the first day at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. NCR, Caesar's Legion, Powder Gangers. I just want to shoot bastards and save the world. Who or what the fuck is a Mr. House? It's very easy to get overwhelmed in your first playthrough, and you can also kind of just give up on the game, especially if you just ignore the plot and shoot things, because eventually you're gonna run out of things to kill. But if you stick to it and read everything and talk to enough people, it all starts to make sense and everything falls into place. And then you can start to really play the game. And what you find is a massive and complex, open and immersive world that, as of now at least, second to bloody none. The devs took a chance at making a legitimately complex story, and they pulled it off. The game never comes out and tells you anything. As far as you, the courier, know, a piece of shit blasted you with an exquisite pistol and left you for dead. Your main quest for a while is just to find the guy who shot you and get revenge, and you could completely miss the legitimately complex story altogether. This makes learning of the momentous events of the Mojave so bloody immersive because it's kind of like real life. If you don't study what is going on, you wouldn't have a clue what is going on even if shit was getting real. So you, the courier, are caught up in a three-way struggle for control of Hoover Dam. Hoover Dam survived the Great War and is thus the single most valuable asset in the wasteland, as it can produce a shit ton of electricity. The new California Republic currently control it, and they are a government that has rebuilt most of California, but the government has become as corrupt as it is in real life, and thus it's having trouble holding on to it. The main villain faction facing off against the NCR is Caesar's Legion. They are a group of tribals that formed into Roman cosplayers, and they want to control Hoover Dam so that they can use it to gain more territory. They are evil due to being a slave-holding aristocracy. Finally, you have the mysterious Mr. House, the shady ruler of the city of New Vegas, which in-game is just a couple of casinos, but it's implied in-game that he controls much more than that. He has a peace treaty with the NCR so that he gets 10% of Hoover Dam's power, and the NCR get to have fun on the town. Right now, the Mojave is a powder keg, and the courier is just the bad enough dude to set it off. So what do you do first? When you leave Doc Ty's house, you are right in the middle of the first town, Good Springs. There is no forest tutorial, and all you gotta do is pick a place and walk to it. But be sure to watch out for these bastards. The cazadores are basically a mobile fence, at least at level 1. You will stand no chance and will be killed instantly if you try and fight them. The cazadores will be blocking a very well placed shortcut. The devs wanted you to play the game, so I don't feel too annoyed about it. In Good Springs, you meet the appropriately named Sunny Smiles, and she will give you a little tutorial if you ask her. In addition to that, she will also give you a rifle, and if you are doing a non-bullshitty run, it's good to do this tutorial as the rifle is totally worth it. The first quest in the town is to stop some local bandits called the Powder Gangers. You can rally the town if you have the right skills. The better the skills, the easier the battle. Or you can leave, overlevel, and return to slaughter all the Powder Gangers. Remember, you don't have to do that quest. You don't even have to talk to Sunny Smiles herself. In fact, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do. Since every playthrough will be a bit different due to the massively open-ended nature of this game, we shall just hit some of the highlights from mine. For a bit, I just wandered the wasteland after shooting all the Powder Gangers, and eventually I came across a town called Nipton with some asshole talking about a lottery. And, harsh. The first time I saw this bastard, he was actually dressed up like a Chaos Space Marine, but that didn't detract from what a powerful scene this is. Here, you have this bastard, Vulpes Inculta, bragging about how he crucified a town filled with people, and you can have no idea who this guy is, and you can potentially have no idea what faction he is even representing. All you know is he's some psychopath. This is one of those moments where you really feel immersed into the game. You are not railroaded to Nipton, you're just minding your own business, shooting bandits and blowing up bloatflies, and then boom, shit gets real. This shows that the Legion are not to be fracked with unless you are good guy GeneralLotz, and good guy GeneralLotz with high enough level, and so I shot Vulpes in the face. From here, you can potentially be inspired to figure out the plot, or, you guessed it, roam the wasteland shooting bastards in the face and saving people from the local wildlife. Of the people you can help out, you have the Boomers, who are okay in my book. They are a rather difficult faction to reach, and despite what you may think, they do know how to use technology, and they use it to drop 81 mortars on your head. There is a special way to get to them, but expect death claws, and to get hit once or twice by the 81 mortars. They take you to their leader, and they make a big deal about how they want you to be their ambassador to the wider wasteland. One really cool detail is that they all have Pip-Boys, since originally they were Vault Dwellers. You complete some piddly shite quests, such as buffing their solar collectors and killing a few things, and the penultimate mission for the Boomers is resurrecting a B-29 bomber. Be sure to save before you enter this area, because it can be a little bit buggy. Next, you got the Brotherhood of Steel that you can assist. I, for one, love the boss. Not only are they inspired by Warhammer 40k, you know, they got power armor and they're divided into chapters, but they want to preserve old world tech. Now, it can be said they have a bit of a chip on their shoulders. Okay, they are elitist pricks, but they have their heart in the right place. So what's the problem? They're hiding out due to the NCR wanting to take them out. You have two choices here: aid Elder McNamara or get him replaced by a guy named Hardin. Elder McNamara is the better choice as he's more open to new ideas. Hardin doesn't get nearly as much characterization, and his quest requires you to isolate a virus, and good God is this quest annoying. Whatever Elder you choose will ultimately determine what kind of ending you get. You then have the Loony Ghouls. They are led by a non-insane glowing one that kind of looks like Blight from Batman Beyond, although way nicer, but still pretty much as crazy. He needs your help so that he can use some spacecraft to find the Promised Land. And I'm not sure if this is supposed to be a joke or meant to be serious. My money is on joke, cause yeah, I don't think those spacecraft are going to go very far. The glowing one is also helped by a normal human with the ghoul voice actor. Said human thinks he's a ghoul cause, deep, man. You first have to clear out some super mutants, and in this game, they are intelligent and can be reasoned with. After this, you get some crap because RPG, and they fly off into the sunset. Okay, I don't think they're gonna make it. Now, most of the time, you will be traveling by yourself, but you can potentially recruit some companions. But you can only have one, at least without mods. And since nothing is mandatory, you can play the entire game without recruiting a single one, and the game will be no different for it, really. I generally only pick up a hottie named Veronica. She wants to travel the wasteland and shoot people in face, or rather punch people in face, but I gave her a rifle, because it's not 1000 AD. She even has her own quest that requires specific triggers to even show up, so you can play the entire game without even knowing it exists. So, how many companions you get is entirely up to you. I could talk about the other ones, but in no playthrough have I ever used them. But from the wiki, I would say they are worth picking up if you want to, as they pretty much all have cool backstories. Eventually, you will track down Benny and blast the bastard in the face. Now, you have 4 choices on how to save the wasteland. Or doom it. You can join the NCR, Legion, Mr. House, or forge your own path. That's right, after you kill Benny, you get the Platinum Chip, and it turns out that Benny wanted to betray his boss, Mr. House, and try and take over New Vegas with the help of his robot named Yes Man. The NCR is corrupt and has done a pretty crappy job with the Mojave Wasteland so far. Caesar's Legion is a bunch of slaving bastards, and by this point in the game, I have been using their assassins for target practice. Mr. House will talk up a big game about trying to turn the New Vegas region into an economic blast furnace, and that he'll create colony ships, and how he will be a benevolent autocrat. But in my book, benevolent autocrat is dictatorial Canute. And right now, he's basically just running crime families and casinos. So I'm not really gonna take his word for it. So even though we ain't got no tea, or a harbor for that matter, it's time for a party, cause no taxation without representation, and it's time for the Courier to change his name to George Washington and show some corrupt governments what a free people can do. The first objective is to take down Mr. House. You do that and find out that he was a corpse in a jar. You can be evil and leave him alive, or you can just blast him. Rough, but that's the choice you get. Now it's time to bring the differing factions in New Vegas on your side. The game doesn't give you the option of recruiting factions to your cause of freedom. If you get into the good graces of the different sub-factions, you should, in theory, be able to take your cause to them, but alas, that is not the case. Instead, you just tell the Yes Man to not blow them away. Around this time, you can still help the NCR by saving their president, and even the Great Kaisar wants to meet with you. And I did! And then I blew him up with a grenade! As part of the GeneralLotz faction, you take your Platinum platinum chip and activate your very own upgraded robot army. Oh yeah, we done with 8mm Mausers, we are fully mechanized! The final battle, no matter what faction you choose, takes place at Hoover Dam, wherein the Legion, NCR, and you can do battle in a winner-take-all gamble for the heart of the Mojave Wasteland. The final battle is nothing short of fucking epic. It looks as epic as you would expect, and it plays that way as well. During the final battle, the B-29 you resurrected bombs the Legion bastards off the map, and the NCR and robot army blow the shit out of Caesar's Legion as well. If you choose to back New Vegas independence, you have to shunt the power to your robot army and then take to the field. You also get an option to blow the dam if you want to channel your inner stupid. Your final battle takes place between you and Legate Lanius. He has a big-ass sword, and it looks cool, but I got me a rifle firing a 7.62 by 5.1 projectile at an insane velocity, and Legate Lanius no longer has a head. The final battle is a war of words between you and the NCR General. Right here is a memorable moment for me. After playing the game for 9 years, I had never been able to reach this point due to the game always crashing, and thus I always gave up on actually beating the game. But the machine god smiled upon the mighty general, and lo did he slay the wild bugs. Another cool aspect of beating the game is that I was in a call with my best friend making Fallout New Vegas the only RPG I have ever finished while talking to someone. And even better, said friend was having something called a crate day, and in the background of the call some triumphant music randomly started playing, setting the stage for the epic conclusion of this most transcendent of games. So NCR Deuce shows up and tries to steal all the credit for the victory. You can, if you have 100 speech, get him on your side. But alas, I was at 98 speech. Fuck! But I was still able to resolve this peacefully and told him to kindly go fuck himself. I mean, get back to that shithole. I mean, I had everyone and everything well in hand. Sadly, the game ends on an ominous note where the yes man shows up and he says that he wants to go away for a while and upgrade himself to be less of a doormat. Does that mean that later on I'm gonna have to use, unlock so I can use my hacking skills to stop a Robro apocalypse? Only time will tell. Oh wait, the writer says no. Then why have this bit at the end if it's not a plot hook? Ugh. The game has an epilogue that talks about your exploits as per usual, and sadly, since you couldn't create a document of rights, a bill of rights if you will, the game implies that the Mojave will be anarchic, but hey, that's what was programmed, so that's what you get. All told, it's an amazing ending for an unforgettable experience. Fallout New Vegas would receive some DLCs: Lonesome Road, Honest Hearts, Old World Blues, and Dead Money. All of these DLCs were great fun when played once. I always felt that they were a bit too railroaded, and when I play New Vegas, I generally skip them. Lonesome Road has the courier facing someone from his past. I don't like the concept, as the courier shouldn't have a past other than what the player creates for him. The DLC is fun enough, but gets really preachy, like Hawkeye Pierce from MASH preachy. End of it has you given the choice whether to nuke the NCR or Legion, and also I guess you could leave the nukes alone. Bye, Legion. Honest Hearts is one of the better ones. You head out to Utah and meet up with Joshua Graham, a Mormon who is helping out some natives. You have to help bring peace. Hey, 1911, sweet. Old World Blues is weird. You have to face some evil scientists called think tanks. They somehow turn you into a cyborg, and your brain has its own personality that somehow is separate from your own. It feels like an episode of Dexter's Lab if viewed high. Last, we got Dead Money. You go to the beautiful Sierra Madre Casino and get stripped of all your weapons, urge to kill rising, and you have a bit of survival horror, urge to kill rising greater. So anyway, I cheated in a service rifle and started blasting. You face Elder Elijah, an insane rogue member of the Brotherhood of Steel. He wants you to do his bidding, or he will blow your head off with an explosive collar. The DLC ends with gold! Gold! You get into the Sierra Madre vault and it's filled with gold! And you have to escape with it before the casino blows. You do this by typing in TCL and afterwards you are rich! just like this game is rich in an endless amount of content and replayability. Many open world games are great for exploration, but sadly that exploration is often very shallow. New Vegas, on the other hand, has oceans of content. Every time you scratch the surface, you find well-written goodness. If you haven't played the game, shell out the $10 and get ready to lose years of your life. It is most certainly a sacrifice worth making. And so, I am GeneralLotz, wishing you good Fallout, Far Cry, Blood Dragon, and good Dragon Age Origins, or whatever makes you happy. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.